Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing out there? Everybody having a good day? Awesome. All right. So we are back. It's Tuesday night. Now, we've been covering a lot of lead gen. Last week, we went over the buyer broker agreement. But tonight, I want to make this a little more interactive. So I want you guys to kind of interact. We're going to talk about some real world scenarios and how they affect us while we're out there. Okay. First off, and foremost, and unfortunately, this came up again today, not on the team, but one of the reasons why it's important to have a team. The most important thing is that we go home safe at the end of the night, right? I want every one of you to go home safe and happy. There's no reason that anybody should be going home from this. This is a stressful job, right? We do have, we're going to go home tired. We leave it all on the line, helping our clients, making sure they get everything, but we want to go home safe, mentally and physically. So situation came up again today. An agent that is a single agent out on her own ran into an aggressive buyer. Now, it started off, so far it hasn't turned physical. However, she's representing the seller. Okay. And the buyer has become very hostile, threatening. He's threatening lawsuits. He's threatening this to the point where now she's got to do a walkthrough and she does not feel comfortable going to the walkthrough alone, which I don't blame her. So I want every one of you guys to think about this when you're going out to these houses. All right. You're going out with somebody that is new a lot of times. And even if they're not new, right? There have been situations in the past where somebody has worked with a client for, multiple years and then had it turned sideways. All right. So while you guys are going out there, I want you to make sure that you are protecting yourselves, keeping, an eye on, what is actually going on. This is a good, another reason why it's so important to really listen to the people we're talking to, because there's indicators, right? There's indicators when something is going wrong. Somebody's acting differently. They're not acting in what would normally be an interaction, whether it's an interaction from them or in general. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to those surroundings. We can do a couple of different things in order to be prepared for this, right? One of which is, identify, the client prior to going out. All right. If it's a new client, it's why we try and meet them in a public place, at the office, a Starbucks, something like that, where we at least have some other people around to gauge who that person is, right? Another reason why it's so important to get that pre-approval letter, right? Not only do we want to know that they are qualified to purchase this home, right? But we want to know that, hey, this person is really who they say they are. Okay. And, without going too far into the weeds, things do happen. Okay. So, Daniel, I'll start with you. I know you're in the construction world. You're meeting a lot of different people. When you're out there, are you paying attention to your safety?
Yes, of course. Yep.
Okay. What do you do to keep yourself safe while you're out there?
Well, like you said, the first thing is trying to, if I don't know the person, trying to meet it at public place. And if if for example in my construction, if I meet someone there first time, trying at least in the street, right in front of the house, or so that way if it's neighbors, if we have our cameras, sometimes I put cameras on the site, so that way that protect not only the property, but if something happened, at least it's recorded. What else? Um, and before meeting, well, that's about it. I mean, if
okay,
yeah.
Martha, how about you? What are you doing to keep yourself safe when you're going out to these appointments?
Usually like Daniel, and like you said, I'll meet him somewhere safe. Or if I really can't do that, I will take my husband with me or somebody else with me. And I also, because a lot of times you need a flashlight to, to look in panels and whatnot, I usually bring one that I can give to the person looking, and one that I carry that has a little it's not a taser, but it's a zapper, the
Stun gun.
electronic.
Mhm.
Yes. And my flashlight has a stun gun attached to it.
Okay.
And I also have pepper spray, but I know there's a number we got that we could call and check on the person
Yeah.
before we
So
go.
there's a few different apps. A lot of them are available in your respective MLSs. I will send out a link in the morning. But you can download the apps on your phone, and what they will do is they will have a timer, right? And you can set them to call, somebody on your emergency contact or whoever you want to work with. And if you don't turn it off, it will automatically dial your emergency contact every so often if you don't turn it off. So that's a good way to protect yourself. But like you said, Martha, bring somebody along, especially on a first meeting. If you have to meet somebody on site, is a great way to go. Okay. It's going to, help to, just protect yourself. So for those of you that are just jumping in now, we're talking about some real world scenarios, and we're just going to be a little interactive today, kind of go through everything. So hopefully you guys are ready to jump on. If you can jump on camera, that'd be great. If not, I understand. But right now we're talking about safety, and we all know that it is super imperative to stay safe when we're out there. So it's a great reason to work with, whether you have a team, a partner, whatever it is, you want to stay safe out there. Sound good? All right. Now, I know there's a question that comes up all the time, and carrying firearms. Anybody that knows me, I'm a big, supporter of the Second Amendment and be able to carry firearms. I also know that I have been trained for many, many years in firearms. Okay. So that's one of those things that if you are not comfortable with, I do not recommend you carry it. But there are training courses that if you feel the necessary, by all means, go get trained. It's a good tool to have when this situation arises, but you have to be trained on how to use it. Sound good? So, what's that, Monica?
I was just saying, yes, I am licensed to carry and I am trained, so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, 100%. You got to practice, and not just at the range. There are tactical courses for those of you that are not familiar. Sitting on a range where it's the gun's on the table and all you do is shoot on the target. It's a good place to start, but you have to think about it, right? Especially for the ladies here, you like to wear nice fancy clothes. There's usually not a place to carry it. You have to consider, how you're going to carry it, how you're going to conceal it, and how you're going to control it. Okay. So, purses, okay, that's fine. But do you always have your purse in your hand, right? How are you going to employ it? You need to take this stuff into consideration. So if anybody is more concerned on a personal basis, I'm more than happy to jump on a one-on-one call and we discuss your own personal situations. And also we'll send out some links for some training programs as well if you're interested. Sound good? All right, so let's roll right on. And we're going to just go through some scenarios tonight. And I want everybody to be interactive here. So we're going to go through some real things that have happened and how would you handle them? Okay, so here's one that also just came up. You're under contract, right? And you're under contract, and you're representing the seller, and now all of a sudden you're halfway through the contract. You're supposed to close in 30 days. 2 weeks into the contract, seller passes away. Okay, does that contract automatically die with the seller?
If it's a single one, I would think that yes, unless there's two buyers, and then it would fall on the second buyer, wouldn't it?
Well, no, I'm talking about in this case, the seller passes away.
Oh, yes, it should be still viable.
Okay, what happens a lot, not every case, but in a lot of cases when somebody passes away?
It has to go through trust,
A
probate
lot
court system.
Probation.
of
Probate.
probate.
Yes.
Yep. So probate. So what we have to do is obviously we have to definitely have to disclose it to the buyer, right? And then we have to find out what their intentions are, right? Some buyers, unfortunately, will not elect to go further because they'll need to get into the property in a quick manner. However, if the buyer is understanding, as a matter of fact, we had this exact situation not all that long ago where we had the listing, and this there was 3 people on the deed, one of which passes away 2 weeks into the contract. Now, on the lucky side, the buyer was currently under lease, and they were going to break the lease so that they could get this house because they really wanted the house. So once we had the conversation with the buyer, everybody was on point. They wanted it, and the sellers still wanted to sell the house. So what we did was we did an addendum, and the buyer stayed with us during probate. And because it was a small estate, it only took about 4 months. And the buyer stayed there. We did the extension, and they stayed until the contract was done. So just because you have a situation, and I know it sounds crazy, right? But it's not that far off. We have these things happen. It happens more often than you might think. Make sense? Now, little sidebar. Why do I bring this stuff up, right? We've talked about it. Some of you guys have heard me talk about is a quote that I really love. And it's actually by Mike Tyson. He said that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and then it all goes away, right? And it really is the truth, right? We plan and we do these contracts and we do everything we possibly can to get it prepped and get all the way to settlement. But something like this, comes into play, and all of a sudden, all the rules go out the window, right? But if we have a seller and a buyer and everybody is in agreement, we can make the adjustments and move on. Now, whoever I'm representing, whether it's the buyer or the seller, this is why it's so important to make sure that our contracts are solid. Now, Heather, you were up there in Maryland with me, and Monica, I believe you're still up in Maryland, right? There was an agent up there that I don't know whatever happened with it, but I know he was under some disciplinary actions because he used to like to play games and leave initials and signatures off the contract, just 1 or 2. But what it would do is he would use it to make it a voidable contract, right? We want to make sure that all of our T's are crossed and all of our I's are dotted, right? Because every time you have a change to the contract, it opens it back up to negotiation. With this person passing away, the buyer would have been well within their rights to walk away, right? And it would have been fine. We would have found him another buyer a few months later. The house would have sat there. But because of this, the buyer was ecstatic that they were able to not have to pay the money to break their lease. So in this case, it worked out for all parties, other than the person that died. Make sense? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Besides, there's still agents that do that stuff up north that I was used to.
There's agents that do it down here too. There's just one in particular that comes to mind. With these stories, and the reason why I do these things and tell these stories and share these things is because when you guys get into the situations, especially for those of you that have only been in the business for a minute, these things still exist. And I want you to have this information until you have, enough of your own transactions that you can say, oh yeah, I've been through this. I've been through this. You'll say, oh, I remember this happened from a story that, Chris told me, or, Tanya, or whoever else happens to be, pop into mind, right? Because these things happen and we work through them. Like I said, I think it was on last week's call or a week before, whatever it was. When I was early on, we had a contract that was falling apart, and the agent on the other side, she was the listing. I think she was the listing agent. She called me up and she was a bulldog. And she said, Chris, she says, you know, I'm too good of an agent to let this thing fall apart. How are we going to make this thing work? And, you know, we had to work through a couple things, and we got it to settlement, right? But if you have you know, somebody that's already hostile, or, you know, whatever it is, sometimes it, you know, it becomes more difficult. And that's where our professionalism really, you know, comes to the front of the line. That's what our job is there for, to, you know, lay out the expectations and keep it on track. Make sense? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
If it's gone to probate and you already have the buyer, would that accelerate the going through the court system
No,
at all for the probate?
no, because the reason for probate is to make sure that there's no other creditors out there that have, or other heirs or anybody like that that have access to the property, or, you know, or have rights to the property. So they need to do some public notices and things like that. And depending on the type of estate is how long it's going to go. So typically it's going to be close to 4 months. Now we've had multiple situations over the years. We've had where the house was already in probate when we listed it, and we knew that, and we knew we had, you know, 45 days left until probate ended. So we had to disclose that in the listing, but we also knew that probate would be over on such and such day. Right. So we've had that situation. We've had, you know, we've had various different situations. So whenever you hear somebody passes away, we need to find out. Matter of fact, next week I'm listing a house in Sebastian, and it's a married couple, but the husband has already passed away. Now that has already been through probate, from what I understand. I'm verifying it now. But being that his name is technically still on the deed, and she has a right of survivorship, I just need the death certificate. So each one's going to be a little different, and you'll have to evaluate it, you know, based on, you know, the client that you're dealing with.
Do the inheritors have the right to rent out the property while in probate?
Rent it out to somebody else, or to, yeah. Okay. It's a good question. It's going to be determined during probate. Yes, they can rent it out to somebody, but you have to check and see if there's any kind of will involved.
Because if you will have a seller that's really ready to move in, so maybe that's what the case, like rent out to them or make some kind of deal.
A pre-occupancy. So, what Elise is talking about, in that case, could we have moved these people in like when we started this? And technically, yes. Now, I always say that every tool is good for somebody, but no tool is good for everybody. What is the downside of doing a pre-occupancy?
It's risky.
Why?
Why? Because they don't get, oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody else want to answer it? I thought somebody else just said something. But no, they all of a sudden, what happens if something changes and they don't get approved for that loan? Now you have to evict them.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like it.
Well, you have the loan, and you potentially evict them. Well, what about on the other side? What if they do get pre-approved for the loan, but they realize that they just don't like the house?
Oh my gosh, that happened. Didn't we have that happen?
Yeah, we had it happen.
The one up in Orlando or somewhere.
In Orlando, yeah. Yeah. And that was the client was coming into town, and he was just going to stay there for like a day or two prior to settlement because he didn't have a hotel to go to. And the day before settlement, he decided he wasn't signing. He didn't like it.
Yep.
Right. Everything was perfectly smooth up until that point. Everything was on point. And, you know, we decided to do it, but it didn't work. What's up, Martha?
Had he seen that house before he moved into it?
He had seen the property initially at the beginning, and then he went back up to like Massachusetts or wherever he was from. So he did see it, and it was actually it was being purchased. If I can't remember if it was meant to be a primary residence.
Airbnb?
I think he was doing the Airbnb with it.
Yeah, because that's what it was, wasn't it? Because it was fully furnished and everything.
Yeah, it was fully furnished. Yeah, I mean, he came back with like ridiculous, request. He asked for like $20,000 in concession, like literally the morning of settlement, and it was for. He said there was a loose handrail and there was a stain on an area rug.
Yeah, I
I mean,
remember that.
Yeah, I mean it was so crazy, and he wanted like $20,000 to cover two things that would have been no more than like $150 fix.
Yeah.
But the consequences of getting out of something like that is now what everybody is probably thinking. Well, what happened? And the sellers were able to sue him.
Yes.
So that, yeah.
And as we did, and we took his earnest money, and we actually, it was so stupid because we took his earnest money, and because we represented the seller, we took his earnest money, and he had to pay another $10,000 in damages. Which, if you look at what he paid in damages and walked away, the house, he actually spent more money to walk away from it than if he would have just taken it at the higher price than what he was trying to, than where he was. So it was silly. So, but sometimes you just can't fix this stuff. Right. And this is why it's so important to really pay attention to our clients. Now, on that particular one, it was on the other side, and the agent that I was dealing with couldn't care less. Right. Called her up. She's like, yeah, it closes. It closes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't care. I mean, literally, that was the conversation. So, I mean, that's not the way we're supposed to be. Make sense? So there are some pitfalls. So does that make sense, Elisa?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think, we just need to consider all options and just be aware of what may happen.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side of that, do we ever do a post occupancy where we let a seller stay in the property? Martha, you're shaking your head yes.
I just did one, I think in September.
Mhm.
They stayed for, I think, 2 weeks because their place they were moving was not ready. And they just paid us the rent, the prorated for the month.
Yeah. And
And
how'd
it worked
that go?
out fine.
Yeah. And a lot of times it does. A lot of times it does. But again, I want you to be aware of what the pitfalls are. So what would be a potential downside of that?
Damage to the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Could a seller damage a house in the time that they're renting it back?
Absolutely.
So what would be the advantage of allowing a seller to rent back a house?
Well, in
A
our
large
case,
period of
our
time.
person wasn't ready to move in and she had to get all her ducks in a row. So it worked out. And we also had them put down a deposit that if they mess things up, we kept it.
Yep. Now, as long as we're on this subject, all right, pre-occupancy or post-occupancy, I'm going to buy a house, all right? I'm a veteran. I want to use my VA loan to purchase a house. Now, when I bought my house, I put the contract in on January 1st, but I didn't actually settle on my property until March 16th. Okay. In this particular case, they didn't care. They were good with the delayed settlement, right? But what if they wanted to close earlier because they needed to open up those funds and wanted to rent it back for, let's say, 90 days? Could I have done that?
Mhm.
You could? Everybody agree with Martha?
I don't think so.
I
Okay.
missed what you said, Chris. Can you say that one more time?
Using a VA loan,
Uh-huh.
and I'm as the purchaser, I want to go ahead and grant a 90-day rent back to the seller, which would now be my renter for 90 days. Can I do that?
Wouldn't it be considered a post occupancy?
It would be considered a post occupancy, but
I thought
you
you
have
said
to
going for
you-
30 days.
it's 60 days.
Is it 60
Oh,
for the
okay.
VA too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a question. I didn't know that. I wasn't sure. I'm gonna-
Yeah. So I mean, we could rent back for 60 days. But after that 60th day, now it's seen as an investment property in the eyes of the VA. So we can't go beyond that. Does that make sense? So there's always things that we can do, but certain things, they won't work with certain programs.
Now, Chris, is that the same for FHA then too?
FHA as well, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then conventional is going to have to do with the particular program and lender and how much you have down. So typically we can do longer with a conventional though. Make sense? So do you guys see how some of these tools can help us out, but also too, we still have to be careful of them? Okay. Now, while we're on that note, right, of financing and contingencies, what happens when let's say we're on the selling side? Okay, we're on the selling side, and we have a buyer that is conventional, and they want to switch to FHA. Do we have to let them? Or what? Or what are the dangers?
You don't have to let them. That opens it back up for negotiation.
Yeah, it opens it back up for negotiation. And why would it be dangerous switching from, conventional to FHA? Martha?
Would that be the requirements that show up in the inspection? What needs to be done versus what for FHA versus conventional?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have the FHA appraisal issues, right? Well, we could. So where the conventional is going to be a little bit easier, right? All of a sudden, FHA is going to bring some other concerns in there. Now, when we made that offer, or when they made the offer based on conventional guidelines, the other part of it, if we get a bad FHA appraisal, a low FHA appraisal, what happens to that property after we get that appraisal based on an FHA loan?
Stays for 6 months.
I'm sorry, Monica?
It stays for like 180 days.
Yeah. For the next 6 months, that appraisal attaches to that house for the next 60 days. So let's say it's a $400,000 listing. You were under contract for 400, and we get a $370,000 appraisal in FHA, right? That is stuck with that house for the next 6 months. Now, it doesn't mean we can't put it back on the market, but we just eliminated it from any FHA buyers. So this, unless of course they want to bring up the difference in cash, but let's face it, most of the FHA buyers don't have that kind of cash, right? So we have to keep that in mind. Make sense? So FHA is a great tool, and I'm not saying to be afraid of it. We went up against, not too long ago, we went up against 3 other cash offers with an FHA offer, and we came out on top, and we won the contract, and we closed it. Not a problem. So this is why it is so important to make sure we're using reputable lenders that are actually doing their job, pulling docs, and it can explain why we're going FHA. All right. Turned out we switched it over to conventional anyway, right before settlement, but that was because it benefited the buyer and it had nothing to do with anybody else. Make sense? Any questions on that? Daniel, you got any questions on that? Juan, you got anything?
No, can you hear me better now, or is it still?
Right now, yeah, actually, it seems better. I don't have that feedback when I talk.
Okay, good. Just taking some notes. A lot of things I wasn't aware of, so thank you guys for the tips.
100%. And this is why we're doing this stuff. So guys, we're in a small group here. So please jump out, yell, if you have a question, let's get involved in this, because I want you guys to work these things out, because there's going to come a time when you're faced with this exact problem and you're going to go, oh yeah, I remember this. And even if you don't remember all the details, you know that there's a path that we can follow. And that's why we get back on this call and we talk it out. Make sense? Ellie, you got any questions or thoughts?
No, not Chris. Everything is pretty clear. I'm absorbing all this information. Pretty good topic. Some of the questions regarding profit, around profit, like, I kind of like, I'm familiar with the topic. However, this FHA and conventional loans back and forth and having it as a second option is really good information, at least for me.
Okay,
So
awesome.
thank you.
Absolutely. Elisa, what about you?
I think that's, the real life cases is always like give us the idea what's to, the clearly understanding what's the difference and what we can use in our practice all the time.
100%. We have to know, what we're working with. Monica here. Monica, where are you located?
Maryland.
Yeah, where in Maryland?
Waldorf.
What's the FHA max over there?
That I do not know.
Okay, last time I checked, it was pretty high. I think you're around 700.
750 or 749.
Yeah, somewhere up there. So we are not near 749 here in Florida, in most of the areas in Florida, right? So we need to know, the restrictions. Monica may not know the exact dollar amount. That's fine, but she knows approximately where we're at. If we're coming close to that, I guarantee you she's going to call the lender to find out. But I also guarantee you, if all of a sudden she decides to do like me and Heather did and escape Maryland and come on down here to Florida, she's going to be really surprised when she tries to run a $700,000 pre-approval on an FHA here in Florida. Right? I mean, so, and I'm not trying to pick on you, Monica. It's just, knowing the different areas, there's different rules and regulations. Make sense?
Yep.
So you have any thoughts or questions there, Monica?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Thanks.
Absolutely. What about you there, Harriet? All right. She can come on. Heather, you have anything?
Yeah, those limits aren't they from county to county too?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's why I asked what county she was in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So each county is a little bit different. Same thing with VA, the 100% limits, right? We all know that, we're, I'm big on the VA stuff, right? In Calvert County, the last time I checked, the VA loan limit to get 100% loan is over $800,000. Right? Not going to see that here in Florida. Most of the areas down here, it's right around 500.
Yeah. I'm looking right now because I'm very interested. So yeah. For just Enviro, Sebastian, it says Enviro, it says for 1 unit, single families, 472. That just doesn't sound right. But
what, for VA?
No, that's for FHA.
Yeah. No, you're right about you're right there.
Yeah. But I see them as high in Florida. Like if you do a state thing in Florida, they can go as high as it said 900 and something. And I guarantee you that's in those crazy counties.
What we're talking about, yeah, Orlando, Miami, where all of a sudden the prices go, a lot higher. So, Naples, things like that, they go higher. So each area is a little bit different.
Yep.
Okay. So it's really important to, and why, why would that be important? The VA loan limit for 100% is just, I think it's the 470 or something right here in Indian River County, right? So let's say we have somebody that's a little bit savvy, right? And they're up by Monica in Calvert County, where we know that the VA loan limits are, 800 plus. They've been living in Calvert County like I was, right? and they have a house in Calvert County. Let's just say they have a $400,000 VA loan balance. Okay, and they're like, hey, change of lifestyle, that qualifies me. I'm going to turn this house into an investment. I'm going to use the rest of my entitlement, which I got over $400,000 to play with, to buy my home in Florida, my next primary residence, at 0%, because I have that 800,000 in Calvert County. Okay, it's not based off of that. It's based off of where you're buying. So being that you have a $400,000 loan in Calvert County, you come down here to Indian River where it's like 475, right around there. Now all of a sudden you only have $75,000 of the entitlement. Now you can still use the VA loan to go up the rest to that, 300, 400, 500, whatever you want to go to. You just have to pay 25% of the difference. Okay, so I know that's not a scenario that happens every day, but that was an exact scenario that I went through. Right now, I had sold my house in Maryland, so I didn't have that contingency, but it could have happened because my house in Maryland, there was no way I would have had enough eligibility left to purchase one here if I did it that way. Make sense? All right. So any other thoughts on that before we move on? Okay. One of the things I've been getting a lot of questions on. All right. We're talking a lot about VA and FHA, loans. On the VA and FHA addendum, both in Maryland and Florida, and pretty much across the country because it's all mandated, there is a spot on the addendum that talks about lender required repairs. Right. And depending on who you talk to, some of them will put 0, some will put a couple hundred, maybe up to 1,000 or, 1,500. Okay. In addition to having the inspection period and repairs. Why is it important to have some sort of number in that repair amount?
So you don't have to go back to negotiation.
100%. 100%. So we have typically a lot of lenders will wait until the inspections are done to order the appraisal, right? Because they don't want to spend the money for the client until they know that we're going to proceed forward. So we go into contract, we run out, we get the inspection done, and my client's like, hey, you know what? I love the house. A couple of minor things, I'm not worried about it. But it's a VA, FHA appraisals needed. So now we move on, or maybe even we negotiate $5,000 in credits or whatever it is. The appraisal comes in and it's marked with, we got a loose handrail, right? And we have some peeling paint, right? Which we see on a lot of these appraisals, right? It's, maybe $500 worth of repairs. But it's required by the lender now to have those things repaired. But we already negotiated $5,000 in credits. When you go back to that seller, they are going to be pissed, a lot of times that say, oh, now you're just trying to nickel and dime me. You already asked me for 5,000. Now you're asking for another 500, or 300, 200, whatever it is. This allows us to work it into the contract in the beginning so we don't have somebody that gets spiteful and all of a sudden a contract falls apart after we've already gone down this road. And, we could have already negotiated in those repairs. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Remember, every time we make a change to that contract, it leaves a window open for somebody to modify or potentially get out of the contract. So we really want to, we're not trying to harp on you guys just because we want to beat up on you to make sure you have clean contracts. We want to, make sure you have clean contracts, because clean contracts, they're not a recommendation, they're a contract. The clean contracts will get us all the way to the end with the least amount of issues. Make sense? Any questions on that? Ellie, you got a question?
Yes, Chris, thank you. So how do you prepare for that? When you have like a VA or FHA like you're talking about, and you have this client, so how do you prepare to negotiate the price? Do you go to the house before Do you have to have an eye for repairs to say, okay, this house is gonna take like around, I don't know, 2,500
Okay.
more for repairs? How do you do that?
So first off, let's look at what is the requirements for VA or FHA or actually any, even most of the conventional products. The requirements state that the house is going to be livable if it's a primary product. Okay. That's what we're looking for. So what that means to us is everything needs to be in place and serviceable. Okay. I don't care if I walk into a house with a buyer today and it's, underpriced, it's a really good price, but it's outdated as anything, which I suspect the one I'm going to this week is going to be, right? So we walk into a house, it's a 1993 construction, and nothing has been changed since 93. All right. It has that same, the same Formica countertops that they put in 93. It has the same, everything. But you know what? It was a couple that was, super gentle on the house. They took super great care of it, and it's in good condition, other than the fact that it's out of date. Okay. That house, as long as everything's functioning, will work just fine. Okay. Where we start having problems is when we walk into a house and the kitchen's been gutted, right? There's no kitchen in the house, right? Or there's supposed to be flooring and they tore all the carpets out and now you just have subflooring. Okay. That house, as far as the VA and FHA are concerned, is no longer livable, right? Because there's work that needs to get done. So that stuff's going to have to be addressed. One of the things the VA likes to hit us on a lot is peeling paint. So if you see peeling paint coming off and you're working with a VA buyer, know that you're going to probably have to scrape the paint and paint it. Okay, that's one of the things I see get hit quite often. But ultimately, you don't have to be a super duper engineer. You just have to look at the house, and if all the components are working and present and serviceable, you're good. Does that make sense, Ellie?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That makes perfect sense. Yes. So which means you have to walk through the house, turn the lights on, open the faucet, things like that. Make sure that the stove is working, the fridge.
Well,
more or less, I don't know.
when you're
But
doing
I'm
a walkthrough on the initial one, I'm not saying you have to do a full-on inspection on every walkthrough. Okay. But as you're showing a house, you should be attempting to get there a little bit early if possible. It doesn't always work. You want to get in there, you want to turn the lights on, right? Because that's going to show the house as best as possible. You want it bright and hopefully the blinds open and all that stuff. You're going to have the inspection for the stove and the refrigerator and all that stuff later. Right now, we just want to look for the obvious stuff, right? But if we see everything is in order, all right, maybe we have one, we're in the middle of right now. The dishwasher is not working, right? Everything else in the house is great, but the dishwasher just doesn't work, right? It's got a little bit of a leak to it, right? For their purposes, for inspection. Now, we didn't have to have one, but for those inspections, the appraiser would have never looked at the washing machine or the dishwasher, rather. All right. But if the dishwasher had been torn out and a big gaping hole in the cabinet, that would have been a problem.
I see the difference. Yeah. Makes sense. Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. Martha?
So if you have a dishwasher that does not work and you put it in the contract that it does not work, are you going to be liable for replacing it?
Not if it's in the disclosures.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, could they ask for it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they could ask for it. Yeah, we can ask for whatever we want. Tracy, who's not here tonight, I know she has one going on right now, and the roof is being done, right? But that was disclosed at the beginning that the roof was being done. So the seller is so there was no need, even though it had an old roof, they knew that they were getting a new roof. There's no further need to negotiate. Right now, on the other side of that, right? What about, for some of us, we don't have small children at the house, right? I show up to buy a house, and I'm going to move into it, and there's one of those big giant, maybe some of you guys are probably too young, but some of you are not, the big giant wood playgrounds that everybody used to buy for their kids. And after 5 years, they're rotted out, they're falling apart, they look like garbage, right? It's sitting in the backyard, right? Do I want that there? No. Do I want to deal with it? No. So I can write it in the contract that part of the contract is them to remove that.
Yeah, you're the fun agent. I've had to deal with that before. Monica knows. Wrote it in, needed it to be gone. And it's such a pain. But yes, they do.
But I mean, as long as you write it into the contract and it's agreed upon by all parties, then we're golden. And they may say, I really don't have the ability to move it. Okay. Well, you know what? At that point, it becomes a negotiating factor. You know what? I'll remove it, but it's going to cost me $500 to remove it. Take $500 off the contract. Okay, cool. Everybody's good. Right? But then again, you might be Martha that loves camping, and she's like, I got a month's worth of firewood sitting there. Leave it alone. Right? I mean, she doesn't care that it's pressure treated and has chemicals in it. Right? But I'm
I
making
can't roast marshmallows on it.
I'm making a joke about it, but does that make sense?
Yes. I've had a lot of stuff flagged with FHA, but you'll get used to it, Ellie. The different things and all appraisers can be a little bit more picky than others, but I could tell you a whole bunch of different things that they flagged that you won't even look to check. So that's why it's good to have a window that doesn't stay up when you open it up, they flag it. I mean, if it doesn't lock, they flag it. It's just, you just never know. And some appraisers won't go in depth like that, but you just really never know. That's why it's always good to have something in there.
Yeah, 100%. You'll
Thank
get
you.
there.
Thank you.
Especially for, Ellie, and anybody else that is, newer here that you haven't done a lot of contracts. I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys start getting out and scheduling previews of properties prior to, engaging with real clients. You have clients, every one of you has a portal full of potential leads. You need to know what the market is like, right? Everybody here is in, relatively different markets. Get out there. Know what a $300,000 house looks like. Know what a $400,000 house looks like. So when you walk in with your client to this house and it's listed at 500, you're like, this is a $400,000 house. Okay. Does that make sense? So start getting out there. It's going to walk you through it. You're going to get, better at it. Every one of these things that we do, it's all about the experience. The classes here, we got to get out and do it in real time. What does a house look like? What is 1,200 square feet compared to 1,800 square feet look like? What are the differences? What are the different roof lines and, all these different architectural features? How do they make you feel when you walk in? All right. You need to be able to paint that picture. So please, if you have not gotten out there, this is for everybody. Make sure you're keeping up on the market. Right. And if you want to know, how to present it, I know we do the walkthrough training. Go to your local builders. All right. Walk into most of the models. Some of the agents are going to be like, look around. You're going to know that that's not a good agent. But most of those agents, they're highly trained and they're going to give you a tour of the property and show you all the features and upgrades. Right. They're trained by the builder. So watch how they do it. Sound good? Any other thoughts? All right. A silly one that's come up quite a few times here recently.
I'm sorry, Chris. Are you first just on my screen or everybody else screen as well?
I mean, anybody else? Am I frozen?
You're frozen for me, yeah. Oh, there we go. There you go.
You freeze a little bit from time to time and come back.
Okay.
Gives us a little break sometimes.
Well, I do what I can. So everybody can see me now? All right, cool. One that comes up quite often, all right? Who holds escrow?
Title.
Yeah, but who?
Idle or
The title, but who dictates it? Does it have to be the same title company that is doing the settlement?
Nope.
no.
No, no. We can have whatever company. Now, when in certain areas, Daniel, Ellie, in your area, typically the buyers are paying for title, so they're going to choose the title company, right? In most of the rest of our areas, the sellers are going to choose title. Actually, Monica, you're choosing title as well. But when the seller chooses title, right, or the title we say chooses title, they're ultimately choosing the title company that's going to close this out. They pay for the title insurance policy, so it's beneficial for our buyers. But a lot of people just use that title to hold the earnest money. It is a good idea to hold the earnest money in a company that you've chosen. Keep it at an arm's length from the title company that the other party has chosen. Right? It's going to help protect our clients in the event that there's a dispute. If there's no dispute, they just wire it over and wire it over for the transaction, and we're good to go at the end. Does that make sense? I know it sounds simple, but that's come up a few times. Just if you're going to use a title company, we have title companies if you need one. But check with your title company because they may not be willing to hold the EMD if they're not doing the settlement. But if they won't do that, then you don't want to work with that title company and get with ours. We have reputable people. Sound good? All right, we got 7 minutes left. Who has a question or a concern that they're trying to overcome? Somebody has to have something.
I always have something.
What do you got, Heather?
I'm just trying to think because I ask you questions on the daily anytime I can get you on the phone. So I don't even know what I have right now. Come on, Monica, help me. What do you have? I know you probably have something that you want to ask. Did you freeze again?
No, I do have something. I have a client that wants me to list a house for him and just found out he bought it at an auction and found out today that there's a $88,000 lien on the property from the previous owner.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't have that documentation. The title person found it, so he wasn't aware of it. And the most the property will sell for is about $90,000.
Oh,
yeah. Unfortunately, Monica, we have had this many, many, many times. So do you know what the lien is for?
No, it was with the owner and I guess a spouse, and the spouse passed away, so I don't know what it was for.
Okay, so there's a couple of different answers to this question. The first thing, unfortunately, is you would have to find out what the lien is and then resolve the lien. Okay, so now in the event where there's an $80,000 lien, and only a $90,000 property, there's probably not going to be enough meat on the bones, and you're going to have to talk with your client about what the other options are, whether they deal with it, hold on to it until they can get it resolved. What I have found personally on properties, on some really bad properties with liens, if you call the county and you explain the situation of what it is, especially if it's like anything involving violations, things like that, you can ask the county. Most of the counties have periods where they'll do an amnesty period. And as long as they can show that it was by a previous owner and that the situation was resolved, they'll let you resolve that lien for pennies on the dollar.
Okay.
Oh my God, that was such a great question. Because
100%. We actually had one. I sold it. It was actually, and it was a former heavy truck repair center. It was industrial property, right on the Turnpike feeder road here. So really, I mean, it was prime real estate for any industrial property you can do anything with, but not anything, right? That's the, it's going to be the most, give you the most options. But in this particular case, one of the previous owners from years ago had run it as a makeshift junkyard. So there was cars and garbage, and he got fines and fines and fines. And by the time I got to this property, it had $27,000 in fines for not cleaning up the trash.
Jesus.
Went to the county, found out that not this week, next week, they were having an amnesty period. And what we did was we took the documentation from the original owner, the original, the liens, went down there, and for $27,000 lien, I believe they closed it out for like $700.
Oh,
That's
wow.
But that's going to be something that you need to check with the individual counties and find out if they have any programs. They're not going to tell you unless you specifically ask, is there any way around this? What kind of amnesty do you provide?
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add
Yeah.
to that real quick? We have, Monica, we have a person, our favorite title lady is actually dealing with something like that right now, where this guy, it's not quite like that, but he had a bankruptcy, and I can't remember what it was on there. And if you call her, she could probably look into a little bit deeper too and find out, how like stuff expires after so many years, Chris. So this guy is under contract, but this lien came up, and if he literally breaks this, contract, if he waits like it's a little over 2 years, then he'll be able to sell it without having to pay for that. So, and it was a significant amount as well, but it was just within a time frame. So yeah, I would have title definitely dig deep into that too.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
they're typically not going to go to the town for you though, so you'll have to.
That's true.
You'll have to have the seller jump in on that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Now, I know we're just about at time, but I am going to throw this out there. And since we're on the subject, for some of you, you're going to hear, if you haven't already heard it, title insurance. You're going to get, when you have financing, you're going to have 2 title insurance policies. One is for the lender. They are going to require that is paid, and that's paid by the buyer. Okay. Or, paid by the buyer, required by the lender to satisfy that lien. All right. They want that to protect their asset. The buyer's title policy is optional by definition, right? They do not have to take it. However, when I was early on in my career, I always used to think that, well, why would you need it? I mean, they're doing a title search, they're doing all this stuff. Since then, luckily, I've never gotten caught up without having it, but I have gotten, had situations where, we've had just countless amounts of different discrepancies on the title. Title insurance is one of the things that you do not want to ever advise your client to walk away from. You may never use it, but in the event that you do, it will kick in. They'll pay the lawyers, whoever it is, they will come in. And just like Monica's dealing with this property that she got from auction that did not have a proper title search, okay, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of reasons why you need to have title insurance in place. Okay. As a matter of fact, Monica, you said Charles County. I had a friend of mine that was in Charles County years ago, and she called me up all upset. Some of you guys are familiar with a site called Hubzoo, right? So it's basically a site where you can go on and you buy these auction properties. I don't know if it's really a thing anymore, but I know when all the foreclosures were going on, it was big. And they would do this discounted title insurance. It was only a partial check. And she had, it was a friend of mine. She was the buyer's agent. They bought a house. Her clients had moved into the house, started their demolition and renovations. I think they were $20,000 or $30,000 deep at this point after like 3 weeks, when they got a cease and desist from the bank saying, you do not own the property. Okay. Now it was resolved and, it got fixed, but it took a long time and a lot of headaches. with having title insurance, the whole purpose of this is a good title company and title insurance is to make sure that your buyer can truly enjoy full ownership of this property without any encumbrances. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yes. Amen.
So the bottom line is, if you take nothing away from tonight, please remember that title insurance is probably one of the most important things that you advise your clients. And I'm not saying to scare them. Okay. It's just a necessity. If they ask, should I walk away? Nope, absolutely. And if you need some examples of it, we can go through some examples of stuff that I have been directly involved, and title insurance has come to the rescue and saved, quite a few clients. Sound good? All right, we're at the top of the hour. Anybody have anything before we roll? Was this helpful tonight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary,
Very.
thank you.
Awesome. Folks, we got a lot of stuff going on. The market is we're starting to see a lot more activity coming up. There's going to be please, if you're out there talking with clients, you're going to have objections. So don't feel that if you have a problem, it's because you're just uninformed. It's just dealing with real estate. That's our job, is to overcome these problems and get these people to home ownership. So let us know if you have questions. Work it out here together. We're not going to pick on you if you don't know the answer. That's what we're doing this for, is so that you can get the information. Sound good?
That's great.
All right,
Perfect. Yes.
let's go get them, and I will see all of you here shortly.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chris.
Chris.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
Chris.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
See ya.